Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello great people, how are you today? I hope that all of you are staying in awesome condition. In this great opportunity, I would like to work on my phonology and phonetic final exam that is talking about the rules of phonology and prosodic phonology. But before all, let me introduce myself. I am Qoniatuzzakiyah. My number is T2019-6188 and I'm from English Education Department 4 of UIN Khas Jember. So, what are you waiting for? Let's get cracking on it. Anyone of you knows what phonological rule is? Okay. A phonological rule is a formal way of expressing a systematic phonological or morphophonological process or diachronic sound chain in language. Phonological rules are commonly used in generative phonology as a notation to capture sound-related operations and computations the human brain performs when producing or comprehending spoken language. Besides, they may use phonetic notation or distinctive features or both. According to Johann Goldsmith, he defines that phonological rules as mapping between two different levels of sounds representation. In this case, the abstract or underlying level and the surface level that, like Bruce Hayes said, or describes that as generalization about the different ways a sound can be pronounced in different environments. While that is to say, the phonological rules describe how a speaker goes from the abstract representation stored in the brain to the actual sound they articulate when they speak. Generally, phonological rules start with the underlying representation of a sound or the phoneme that is stored in the speaker's mind, and it is yield the final surface form or what the speaker actually pronounced. And also, when an underlying form of multiply surface forms, this is often referred to as allomophony. For example, the English plural written S may be pronounced as S in cats, Z in cabs and peas, or as a Z in buses, cats. These forms are theorized to be stored mentally as the same as, but the surface pronunciations are defined through a phonological rule. Next, what do phonological rules exist? So first, of similitude theory. It has been proposed that a universal set of phonological contents exists and that this set is ordered with some contrasts being more highly ranked. For the first is the rankings differ from language to language, and the other of the rankings determines the different sound patterns found across languages. And what about the function? So the function of phonological rules is to provide the phonetic information necessary from the pronunciation of alternatives, that is derivation. So what is derivation? Derivation is the way the phonological rules apply to the underlying phonemic representation to create the phonetic representation. And do you know about the characteristic of the phonological rule? Okay, for the first characteristic is language specificity. So, a phonological rule that is present in one language may not be present in other languages, or even in all dialects of a given language. Second, the productivity that is to apply even to new words. For example, if an English speaker is asked to pronounce the plural of the nonsense word that is works, they pronounce it the final S as Z, not S, even though they have never used the word before. So this is the kind of test is called with work test. And the third is unthought and unconscious. So the speakers apply the rules without being aware of it, and they acquire the rules early in life without any explicit teaching. And the fourth is intuitive. So, the rules give speakers intuitions about the word are well-formed or acceptable. If a speaker hears a word that does not conform to the language phonological rules, the word will sound foreign or ill-formed. And the next is about the type of the phonological rules. So there are 6 types. For the first is an assimilation. So what does assimilation mean? An assimilation rule is a rule that makes a neighboring segment more similar by duplicating a phonetic property. For example, in English, vowel nasalization rule states that vowels become nasalized before a nasal consonant within the same syllable. So, assimilation rules reflects co-articulation. So what is co-articulation? Co-articulation is the spreading of phonetic features either in anticipation or in the preservation of articulatory process. For example, it is easier to lower the volume while a vowel is being produced before a nasal stop than to wait for the completion of the vowel to then lower the volume even more quickly. There are many assimilation rules in English and other languages. So, it's like the English plural and past tense morphemes and akan negative morphemes. For example, winter becomes winter. And the second type is dissimilation. So, what is dissimilation? Dissimilation is when a sound changes one of its features to become less similar to an adjacent sound, usually to make the two sounds more distinguishable. This type of rule is often seen among people speaking a language that is not their native language, where the sound contrast may be difficult and it's sometimes easier to articulate these similar sounds. For example, the word of six, S-I-X-T-H, becomes sick, six. That's the example. And the third type is insertion. So, insertion is when an extra sound is added between two others. For example, film becomes film, film becomes film, hamster becomes hamster. That the first word is H-A-M-P-S-T-E-R becomes hamster. Something like that. This also occurs in English plural rule when the plural morpheme Z is added to bus, the word of bus. Bus and it ends with Z will be unpronounceable for most English speakers. So short vowel E is inserted between S and Z, bus. Okay, the next is deletion. Deletion is when a sound such as stressless syllable or a weak consonant is not pronounced. For example, most of American English speakers do not pronounce the D in handbag. Handbag. And the other example is did not become didn't. Besides, the segment deletion is more common than insertion. So the word memory is often pronounced as if it were spelled memory. And the other example is the deletion of G. In the word of sign, S-I-G-N becomes sign. The second is in the word of D-E-S-I-G-N becomes design. And the third is paradigm. P-A-R-A-D-I-G-M becomes paradigmed. So it delayed the subject of G. While then, phonological rules may also reorder sequence of phonemes in which it calls us metathesis rules. For example, ox becomes X, ox, X. Or in other word, if we pronounce asking, 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 something like that. In some of dialects of English, for example, the word as is pronounced as X that I have given you before, but the word asking is pronounced as asking, asking. In these dialects, a metathesis rule reorders the S and K in certain contexts. The last is from one to many and from many to one. In English, unstarted vowels are reduced to a. Example, the I in the word of competition. So, in English, unstarted words are reduced to a means that competition. I'm so sorry, I mean that for the first is compete. Compete becomes competition. And the second is maintain. Maintain becomes maintenance. So it unstressed the vowel that reduced to a. Competition and maintenance. Okay, go on to the second important point, that is prosodic phonology. So, any one of you knows what prosodic phonology is? Okay, let me explain you more detail about this. Prosodic phonology is a theory of the way in which the flow of speech is organized into a finite set of phonological units, that is, such as phonology and grammar. It is also as a theory of interactions between phonology and the components of the grammar. The interactions in the form of mapping rules that build phonological structure on the basis of morphological, synthetic, and semantic notions, and it provides the set of phonological units necessary to characterize the domains of application of a large number of phonological rules. Besides, the division of the speech change into various phonological mix represents the structures found in the other components of the grammar itself. A fundamental aspect of prosodic theory is that the phonological constituents as themselves are not necessarily isomorphic to any constituents found elsewhere in the grammar. So, the prosodic features are features that appear when we put sounds together in connected speech. It is the most important to teach learners prosodic features, as successful communication depends as much on intonation, stress, and rhythm, and also length is on the correct pronunciation of sounds. So here there are some of features of prosodic phonology. For the first is intonation. Intonation is crucial for communication and also a largely unconscious mechanism, and as such a complex aspect of pronunciation. So what is intonation? Intonation is about how we say things rather than what we say. Without intonation, it's impossible to understand the expression and thoughts that go with words. Listen to somebody speaking or your friend speak out without paying attention to the words or to the melody you hear is the intonation itself. It has the following features. For the first is it's divided into phrases, also known as tone units. The second, the pitch moves up and down within a pitch range. Or everybody has their own pitch range. Yes, languages too differ in pitch range. English has particularly a wide pitch range. Next is in each Then unique, the pitch movement, or it rises or falls in tune, or a combination of the two, takes place on the most important syllable, known as the tonic syllable. The tonic syllable is usually a high content word and near the end of the unit. And the next is, these patterns of pitch variation are essential to a phrase's meaning. Changing the intonation can completely change the meaning. That's the importance of giving intonation in our speaking exactly. For example, when you say it's raining, that's. Now you can say again using the same words by giving indifferent meaning. You could say it to mean like, what a surprise, or how annoying you are, or that's great. There are many possibilities. So the second is stress. Stress is emphasis given to a certain syllables in word in English. Besides, stress is produced with a larger, louder, and higher pitched sound that unstressed sounds. For example, the word banana. Banana has stress on the second syllable, the word, and the other example is photographic on the third. Photographic. Okay, the third is speech tempo or the tempo. The tempo is the measure of the number of speech units of given type produced within a given amount of time, and also speech tempo is delivered to vary within the speech of one person according to contextual and emotional factors between speakers and also between the different languages and dialects. However, there are many problems involved in investigating the variance scientifically. And the fourth is a rhythm. Although rhythm is not a prosodic variable in the way that pitch or loudness are, it is usual to treat a language characteristic rhythm as a part of its prosodic phonology. It has often been asserted that languages exhibit regularity in the timing of successive units of speech, and regularly referred to as isochrony, and that every language may be assigned one of three rhetorical types. So the first is terse-timed, or it is defined as where the durations of the intervals between terse syllables is relatively contains. And the second is level-timed, that is, the duration of the successive syllables are relatively contains. And more timed, where durations of successive more are relatively constant. As explained that in the isochrony article, this claim has not been supported by scientific evidence. The next is the voiced or unvoiced, or the pause in the form of interruption to articulatory continuity, such as an open or terminal juxtaposed conversation analysis commonly notes pause length, distinguishing auditory hesitation from silent pauses in one challenge. Contrasting gesture within and without word chunk can aid in identifying pauses. There are a variety of filled pause types. Formulaic language pause fillers include like, and And paralinguistic expressive repetitive pauses include the psych and gas. The next is pausing, or its like contributes to the perception of word groups or chunks. Examples include the phrase mean, constituent, and interjection. Chunks commonly highlight lexical items or fixed expression idioms. Chunking prosody or is presented on any complete utterance and may correspond to a synthetic category, but not necessarily the well-known English chunk, or for example, like Know what I mean? Know what I mean? Sounds like a single word. Know what I mean? Know what I mean? Due to blurring or erasing the articulation of adjacent word syllables, thereby changing the potential open junctures between words into closed junctures. In summary, that the phonology rule and prosodic phonology is the way to ease everyone in pronouncing the words and to speak up with meaningful vocabularies and meaningful speaking. Exactly right. Okay, maybe that's all what I can explain you in this video. If I have made a lot of mistakes, I really beg your pardon. And the last I say, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you in the next chance. Goodbye.